Killa Kanz are ramshackle orc walkers piloted by Gretchin. Gretchin often line up to be one of the candidates to become a Killa Kan to give them more power to lord it over those who once bullied them. However, it often also drives them insane, being wired into a can for the rest of their lives. Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and today we're covering the Killa Kanz, the cowering walkers of the orcs. Despite their impressive size and weaponry, they are still grots at heart and are thus very easy to spook. Killa Kanz come in at 125 points for 3 or 250 points for 6. At terms of their stats, they move 6 inches, toughness 6 with a 3+ save, an invulnerable save 6+, 5 wounds, leadership 8+, and OC 2. They certainly aren't very fast, but they are rather tough, very resilient to small arms, and thanks to their 5 wounds, weapons like damage 2 or damage 3 will have to waste an extra shot, or will waste damage trying to kill these things, so they are very tough. In terms of ranged weaponry, they all come stock standard with the Can Shooter, which is rapid fire 2 with devastating wounds at 36-inch range with 3 attacks that hit on 4s at strength 5, AP 0, and damage 1. Then they can swap any amount of those out for a Grotzuka rocket launcher or Scorcha. The Grotzuka is blast and ignores cover with 18-inch range and D3 plus 3 attacks with ballistic skill 4+, strength 6, AP 1, and damage 1. Very solid for killing light infantry. The rocket launcher has blast, 24-inch range, D3 attacks that hit on 4s at strength 9, AP 2, and damage 3. A very nice and general purpose profile that will be very vicious to light vehicles and infantry. The Scorcha is a fairly standard heavy flamer at torrent, ignore cover, 12 inches, D6 attacks that hit on not applicable, strength 5, AP 1, and damage 1. In terms of melee weapons, they have Can Claws, which are 3 attacks that hit on 4s at strength 8, AP 2, and damage 3. Fairly good at killing most kinds of infantries. Their ability is Shooty Power Trip. When this unit is selected to shoot, you can choose to roll 1d6. On a 1 to 2, this unit suffers d6 mortal wounds. On a 3 to 4, you add 1 to the strength characteristics of their ranged weapons till the end of the phase. And on a 5 to 6, you add 1 to the attacks characteristics of ranged weapons equipped by models until the end of the phase. In terms of a general stat line, this is very solid for their points cost at about 40 points per model. In terms of buff options, Gazgil, Thraka, and Makari do have a buff where doing the Wa, every orc model within 12 inches gains lethal hits, so these guys would certainly appreciate that, giving their mid-strength weapons. And then a mech can offer one of them a repair as well as hitting more accurately. However, I would say the mech is far better suited to a unit like a Def Dread, since there's only one of them, and in general will appreciate the buff more instead of just buffing one Killa Kan. However, it shouldn't be misunderstood that if a mech is nearby, there is no harm in repairing one of these guys if they're wounded, just given how tough they can be and how bothersome they can be to remove. As I mentioned, these guys are very tough for their 40 points, and in general will take up a lot of enemy fire, and their damage is respectable enough that it isn't exactly easy enough to ignore them. However, this does come with the issue that there isn't that many external buffs, so we do have to move on to detachments now. And in terms of detachments, there are quite a few that they will work quite well in, and their datasheet is solid enough they can offer fire support for most detachments even if they don't have a direct buff there. In terms of the Warhorde, this is the Take All Comers detachment. It will greatly improve their melee damage, and they will of course offer that fire support, and they are not a terrible choice for something like Unbridled Carnage, though I would say there are better options in that case. To Big Hunt, they lack the keyword for, and in that detachment you could bring something like Squighog Boys, which definitely do handle vehicles plenty well enough, and they don't really need any external firepower in that regard. The Cult of Speed doesn't buff walkers, however, they could still offer some very tough midfield wounds, given the fact that the bikes and the buggies are often quite squishy. Dread Mob is of course where these guys are right at home. They enjoy both the lethal and the sustained hits. They're good targets for rerolls and make really solid frontline units that will take the objectives very well given their high OC for vehicles. Green Tide, they again lack the keyword. However, the same sort of thing applies with the Cult of Speed. They offer toughness and firepower that is useful in most situations, and Bully Boys is much the same. But the reason that I don't think they're quite as solid in Bully Boys is that knobs with double Wa turns will generally not struggle to take down anything in the game, so their extra sort of general purpose damage to finish off or soften up targets isn't quite as useful as it would be elsewhere. However, I do think there is something to be said of just having tough units to walk around the board in any detachment, even if they don't directly benefit from it. In terms of competitors, Def Dreads certainly do come to mind at being about the same points cost, though the Def Dreads offer less durability but they do have a lot more potential damage with either a 4 claw build or a 4 custom mega cannon build, and also work much better with mechs. However, Killa Kanz have the benefits of being a little smaller, a little tougher, as well as the fact that they don't really need anything and can simply go walk off on their own to go harass the midboard or even the flanks. However, there is definitely something to be said there. Morkanauts, if you're running a huge unit of Killa Kanz, a Morkanaut is only 30 points more and does offer an interesting abilities with his huge melee and big gun, which do work quite well, especially in the Dread Mob, where they can get that extra damage or rerolls and so on and so forth. And I would like to give out a shout out to Knobs, who do fill a sort of similar role, where Knobs are tough, they like to take the midfield, and will be generally good at killing most things. Though Knobs don't have quite as much toughness, they do have a lot more damage than the Killa Kanz do. However, I do feel the Killa Kanz do fill a sort of unique role, almost like Gravis armor, where they can simply take a lot of firepower and keep on chugging along. Though, of course, these are all solid competitors for them. In terms of their best use, I do believe Killa Kanz are quite a solid unit, with a very, very good defensive profile, where even the most effective weapons will either be requiring extra shots to kill them or wasting damage in the case of something like autocannons. In terms of their loadouts, I would generally say the rocket launcher is the best, though the Grodzuka is also pretty solid anti-horde if you're really struggling with that. And their claws are very effective. They're generally very good at bullying infantry, and their weapons are general purpose enough that most vehicles will fail a couple, 2 to 3 saves from their rocket launchers or their claws, which will put the damage on a vehicle to the point where it's starting to get to low health, or they are good executioners to finish off a vehicle like that, given their better accuracy than most of their orcs. As I mentioned, they do sit in slight competition with the Def Dread, though I think they are somewhere in between a Def Dread and Mech Guns, given their more solid range damage but worse melee damage. They definitely do act as a good screen for your backline with things like Mech Guns. And that's where they sort of come into where I think they really are. Despite the fact they are walker vehicles, I think they have more in common with frontline troops, something like, as I mentioned, Gravis armored units that are quite tough. They're not quite something like Terminators, but they do have their own brand of toughness, which is very useful to have. And as I mentioned, they will be able to chip just about anything with their damage. And in terms of detachments, I'd say they're at their best in either Warhorde for that big melee damage boost, or in, of course, Dread Mob, where they, again, effectively act as that unit's grunt unit. With their OC, they're very good on objectives, though you do have to be careful. Well, the unit would have to be quite small. They are quite susceptible to battle shock, which can be situationally very bad. However, I think the Def Dreads, or the Killa Kanz, make a very, very solid unit for the orcs. I've been Spoons Rattling. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you would like to let me know your thoughts down in the comments, please do, and make sure to like and subscribe after the video if you enjoyed it. I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.